We'll call the meeting to order, and Susan, you're on. Susan Thompson will start us off. We do. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anything else we have to do? Okay.
Do you want minutes? Okay, I can get them together, but go ahead. I think we need a separate one for the minutes, Diana says.
For the minutes as well? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as well?
So move, or second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion, minutes approved. Discussion topic is the budget for 2026.
Actually, we're going to start with a couple of standing items first before we do that. So I put a different handout on your, at the table that has all the slides that we're going to talk about, so you can read them. This is the year-end preliminary for 2024. I just wanted to make sure you know that this is not audited yet. I'm pretty confident at this point. So the first column, that is year-to-date, and that's through, we call it period 13, which is really anything that came in for 24 in January. And then I have some remaining estimates. So through January, revenues exceeded expenses by about 1.1 million. Going into February, we're still waiting on the final payments from the state. We have the state aid and then also the highway tax, and then there's some grant applications coming through. And then in November, the commission approved any excess to go to transit, so that is shown in the bottom. So at the end of the year, I'm projecting that we will have revenues in excess of expenses of about 340,000. And then oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Question?
Chair, I have a question. Thank you, Susan. So my question is, we approved a balanced budget of 132 million for 2024?
132, I think, is 25.
Oh, 25,
I think
okay.
it was 119, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
So what happens is that isn't the budget that you approve in June. That's the budget you approved in June, and then every time you do a budget adjustment throughout commission meetings throughout the year, that
Right.
budget gets updated.
So my question is, throughout the year, I know my 5 departments, there are adjustments that are made, funds that are taken back, and maybe this is an individual conversation, but just about full transparency. I see here you note, for instance, fire was under, we have 9, 10, and 11, 12 here where you show under, but my question is, how is that accounting throughout the year when those changes and adjustments are made?
If it's something that we specifically know, for example, like that transit transfer
Right.
that we approve, the 9, 10, 11, and 12, most of those have to do with staffing.
Right.
And that happens over the course of, the whole year. Mid-year, we look at if the staffing budget is significantly off, we make that change. We'll adjust the budget. Otherwise, the budget just stays as it is, and it'll show it's under budget.
Okay, so maybe it's an offline conversation about that process throughout the year, because I know some of the items are items that are out of control of the departments, right, based on trending and calculation, and I think sometimes there's been a surprise about something being taken or changed or not communicated always, and so I think maybe that's an offline conversation to walk through that.
The only thing that we do adjust is salaries, because those aren't able to be reallocated. So if there's something else going on, yeah, we should talk about it. 'Cause
Okay,
that's not
thank
supposed to be happening. Okay, anyone have any questions? The auditors will start in March. We should have preliminary information in June with the final prior to the end of June for the audit. So the next standing item, I just wanted to give an update on sales tax. This is a little outdated. We should be getting a new one with all of 2024 later this week. So this is the receipts that we received through January, which reflects sales through November. This had been a little bit flat, so I was happy to see some increase in November. So year-to-date for the city was growth of 3.4%. It's a little below 22 and 23. Those were kind of COVID rebounds, though, so I think I'm happy to see a 3.4% increase. Any questions on that? Okay, so I set some time aside. We have really two discussion topics. I want to talk about the budget. We talked a little bit preliminarily in January and said we would come back to this in February. And then Troy has a couple items, so I want to make sure I leave enough time for him. So the intent of the budget conversation is really just to visit about the process, what works, what didn't, what things we want to make changes to. This is the information that I provided last month. So as we look through the budget, we want to make sure we're focusing on our cash balances. I'm suggesting we add a line item for a fund balance increase. You know, we'll want to incorporate ongoing compensation discussions, and legislative property tax initiatives, which continue to look like that's moving ahead, and then a balanced approach to incorporating the new public safety sales tax. And then I also threw up here, these were some touch points that we talked about. I had suggested collaboration, compromise, and consensus. And then a couple of the other items that came about were, of course, transparency, integrity, and strategy. So we'll be working towards that. Anyone have any other words you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the transparency, the collaboration. I would ask that, like in the last couple of years too, we bring communication, we bring the community along with us at every step of the way, explaining the challenges we have, the opportunities, being, again, very transparent about it, but really telling that story throughout the entire process so that the community stays engaged and understands the real challenges facing us.
Yep, I'll talk about that a little bit. The next slide is the timeline. And this timeline, I think, should give us some opportunities to make that communication. So I have in blue where we'll talk with the commission. So the 3 finance committees should give an opportunity for us to have some dialogue that can be shared with the public. I don't want to steal Greg's thunder. You have a presentation tomorrow, but we just talked about Zen City, which does some surveying. So that would be a good opportunity for us as we reach points where we would like more engagement to do community surveys. So obviously today is the overview. Then we're going to be starting the budget process a couple of weeks early for the department heads that are here. And then they have typically about a month to get their requests back to finance. We have a finance committee meeting in April. That's where we want to have some preliminary budget discussion. We also are planning to bring forward to you public safety compensation plan. Human Resources is working with MRA to collect public safety data. Then throughout the month of March, there'll be weekly meetings with MRA and city administration leaders, admin, HR, finance, and police and fire. And then the intent is that at that April finance meeting, we would bring forward a plan to be discussed and approved. I think public safety sales tax is going to have to be a big part of our conversation for the budget, but I think until we get that compensation piece decided, we're not really going to be able to move forward on that. So I think it's important that we get that discussed and a timeline set as soon as possible. So that's on the schedule for April.
If I, Mr. Chair, on the public safety tax, I know that both chiefs have met. They're working on what they're going to bring forward as far as their recommendations. Also, the compensation data has been verified and is all documented on where it came from. So that's coming forward from Chief Dirksen. I know Chief Sobolski's also working on some information. So we had talked earlier about that coming forward. It's all been verified information and using that as the starting point. So my expectation would be that that's part of that conversation. as well.
I believe that part of those discussions or that we'll look at kind of both sets of data and see if there can be some sort of overall joint proposal rather than two different ones.
And it includes a capital strategy long-term as well.
Okay.
So if I'm to understand this, is in April, you may have a compensation package for fire and police?
We will.
Thank you.
So then, once those items get addressed, we have initial budget team meetings in May with the departments. Then we meet again in June. That's when we bring in the commission liaison and communications to sort of talk through where we are and what decisions need to be made. We had a cabinet retreat last week, and the cabinet discussed having another cabinet meeting kind of in the middle of that so that we as a cabinet can discuss some of the budget decisions. So I think that's going to happen kind of in the end of May while we're kind of trying to balance some of the priorities, get that insight as well. And then we have a June Finance Committee meeting, and then mid-July starts kind of the statutory requirements, the mayor's preliminary budget presentation, the preliminary budget, final budget, the hearing, that sort of thing. I have started this, as I said, a couple weeks early because I really, we're going to be right in the middle of ERP, and we're also working on a timekeeping system for HR and Finance will be busy with those. So if we could get this wrapped up earlier this year, that would be more beneficial for Finance. And then it would also give us more time to spend some time on our budget book, make it a little more explanatory, kind of expand it beyond the general fund and talk more about the big picture. So that would be the intent of that. Does anyone have any questions on the calendar? Does that look like it meets favor with everyone as far as the timeline? Okay. So as I mentioned, we'll be sending out instructions to the department. They basically get the cover memo and a spreadsheet that they put in their budget requests, and they talk about their needs. And so I thought we could do this little exercise maybe to help me get a better idea, or help all of us get a better idea of the priorities. So we had a budget retreat, or a finance, we had a cabinet retreat last week. The major discussion was kind of financial items. And we went through this kind of an overview of the general fund, both the revenues and the expenses. Had a lot of good conversations, so I thought perhaps something like this would be helpful at this point. If anyone had any questions or you wanted to provide your suggestions on where we focus our efforts. So this is basically how we start the budget with the general fund. These are the major line items, and so on the left I have kind of what goes into that item and where it comes from. And then on the right in the red are the issues that we're addressing. So the very first one is property taxes, as we talked about. So the initiative that's floating around in the legislature, as we've all talked about, would cap the budget at 3% revenue growth. That excludes any new growth, any new community growth. So I've done the math there just so we can kind of get an idea. So 3% of $43 million is $1.3 million. And our growth has averaged about 3%. So for this illustration, I used 2.75. So we are saying that, we have about $2.5 million of property tax revenue that will, could potentially be used to increase or to fund the budget next year. The new item will be the public safety sales tax. That is what we need to talk about in April, how that flows through the general fund, what that is going to be covering. Obviously, there'll be some additional compensation expenses that we'll need to address, but we'll have to talk about if there's other things within the general fund that would cover. And then I wanted to go through kind of some of the others so you can see how
there's really not a lot of growth in some of these lines. Franchise fees, the primary one is Excel and Cass County Electric. That is capped at 5. We moved it from 2% fee to 4% fee just recently, so I don't know that there's appetite to do that. And really, those are very dependent on what the rate is and on what the weather is. Like if it's cold and you have your heater on all winter, or if it's a mild winter. So we've seen a lot of fluctuation. That's one of the items that was kind of off from the financials throughout the year. When we went from 2 to 4, I basically just doubled the revenue, but it's been a mild winter, so it was quite a bit less than what the budget was. The next item is licenses and permits. That's building fees. That's the biggest component. I lean on inspections and engineering to help project that. That's, of course, based on rates, and one of the things we'll be looking at is, are we assessing rates that are covering all of our fees? But that one is also based on the economic outlook. With the interest rates higher and the cost of components, what can we expect for building and the related revenues with that. Health grants, those are primarily, the federal grants are primarily for health, and they usually accompany expenses, so it's kind of a wash, if you will. It goes up and down depending on what programs the health department is participating in. One other thing I wanted to mention is we have recognized all of our COVID and CARES funds as of the end of 2024. State revenue, that is primarily the health grants, library aid, fire tax. It also includes state aid and highway distribution. That has been generally flat. Local grant revenue, again, that is things that we charge out to local entities, so school nurses, the school resource officer, some pilot fees. That's not a big dollar amount, and it typically is flat, and it's often offset with some expenses. Charges for services, that is primarily permits and the CIP. When we do capital improvement projects, we charge a finance and an engineering fee. That's where those fees roll up. Also, things that we charge Cass County and the airport for police department. And then we also charge all the enterprise funds and overhead allocation to cover their portion of the service departments within the general fund. So that is a large driver as well. So we need to assess our costs. But the tie there with kind of other things that we talk about throughout the year is the engineering CIP is really a driver of this revenue source, because if we're doing big projects, there's fees that come through. If we have a lighter engineering year, there'll be less fees. Miscellaneous is interest income. The rates, of course, are declining slightly, and then the other issue is that we benefit from the fact that we're investing our money and the diversion money. Next year, they'll be starting to make some of their contractor payments, so that balance will be declining, so that may result in us getting less interest from the financial institutions that we're working with. And then the last item is transfers in. Those come from the enterprise funds. We are able to transfer in 20% of their gross revenue, but we take that in, from that, we split it between the general fund and also 475, which is capital. So depending on our capital needs or our general fund needs, they kind of get jockeyed around a bit. So the issue with that is a couple things we look at are the rates. We did have some rate increases, so our gross revenue should increase a little bit. But we also need to make sure we're balancing enterprise fund and helping to grow their cash balances as well. So that's what that's what the general fund revenue, that's the starting point. Does anyone have any questions, any comments or suggestions?
When we look at I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mayor.
When we look at permits this year, we're down less than 700 million. Does engineering have any clue where the permits will go this next year? Anticipating about the same or even further down? When we talked to the building industry last couple of months, they've been concerned about building going to be down even further. It'd be fair to say maybe our charges for services and engineering will be down further?
Yes, that's something we'll have to look at. I haven't reached out to them yet. This was just the overview. So yes, that's certainly something we need to be mindful of. I guess just a general question, thoughts on fees? We talk about this particularly with utilities, but, we charge fees in other departments as well. I think clearly we don't want to be at the top of the fee structure, but I think, our goal should be to make sure that we're covering all of our costs. So that's what we'll be assessing. We'll be looking closely at all the fees and making sure we're doing that.
Commissioner Colbeck?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Anyone else have questions on revenues? Okay, then these are the expenses, and these all roll up from all of the general fund departments, but these are the categories that we look at throughout when we talk about the budget. It's kind of the major buckets. So if you have, suggestions or directives that you want me to share with the other departments as we put together our budgets, we have some ideas. I'll mention those as we go, but please feel free to share. So very first one is salaries. We've talked about this quite a bit. Salaries are a significant part of the general fund budget, $71 million just for salaries. Benefits is another 26, so it's about 70% of the general fund. I wrote a couple numbers up there. The first one, the $1 million, that is the estimate of what our STEP plan costs. So we have about 70% of the general fund employees are not capped out, so they get a step. A step's about 2%. So, right out of the gate, that program is going to cost $1 million. Then we'll be talking about the compensation plans in April, so whatever implications are with the public safety compensation plan. And then the conversation will also include if there's next steps for the rest of the compensation plan for non-public safety employees. Second item is benefits. The biggest one there, of course, is health insurance. Right now, our health insurance costs, the city's cost of health insurance is $10 million. So each 1% increase we get in our rates costs us about another $100,000. In 25, it was 9. I just put in 7.5 just as a placeholder, so that's $750,000 additional expense. Another big component is the pension actuarial determined contribution that we make to shore back up the non-PERS pensions. There's a city pension, a police pension, and a fire pension. That was $5 million last year. Other services, that is the biggest non-personnel cost. I get questioned about that a lot when we talk about the budget, so I wanted to list what that includes. It's kind of the hodgepodge of things, but they're expensive. It's legal, audit, our contribution to MetroCog, our IS costs, health, marketing, security, parking enforcement, banking fees, employee physicals, cleaning, snow removal, jail contract, the growth plan, animal impound, and those community partnerships and assistance. So what I often get when I get the budgets back is, same as last year, plus 3% for, quote, inflation adjustment. So as we look, as I send the instructions out to the departments and they come back, we're going to be thoroughly looking at these expenses, particularly the use of consultants. I know we've talked about that. In my experience, there's kind of 3, I guess we came up with a 4th last week about why you use consultants, but you're either too busy, it's something that you're too busy, you need someone to do it for you, or it's too complicated, you need the technical expertise, or it's something that you have the time and the ability to do, but it's better perceived if it comes from a third party. And I think those are the things we need to talk about. How comfortable are we, saying, yes, I'm comfortable that our team did this. And then the fourth one is, oh, never mind, it's only 3. There's a different one that had 4, sorry. I'll talk about that when we get down to another line. So energy is number 4. That one is largely out of our control. Primary electricity and fuel. Repair and maintenance, that is a lot of the facilities contracts, but also the big one there is IS, our annual software. We've talked about this during the budget. As we move more towards, or the world moves more toward cloud-based and subscriptions, that's becoming really expensive. What I can see that was coded to information services was about $1.6 million of annual software costs, but then I think there's some that are also coded to departments. So as we transition to our new software system, we are going to be very strategic about how we code those so we can keep track of all that. I'm going to be working with IS. We're going to come up with a master software list, make sure there's not redundancies, we're using everything. So that will be one of the hot points this year that we look at. Supplies, again, a lot of those are largely out of our control. It's a wide range of things. It's where our medical supplies go, books for the library, uniforms, consumables for public safety, ammunition and tools, sand, salt, cleaning products, all of those are kind of at the mercy of inflation. Travel and education, that one we've spent, I often get responses back that say, let's return to pre-COVID travel, and I think that's something we talked a little bit about last week, to reevaluate that. Throughout COVID, we learned that online training is possible. It's much more economical. Are there other options to rotate training opportunities among employees? So we'll be looking at that. Professional services, the bulk of this one is insurance. So we have NADERF, which is the city's liability insurance, and State Fire and Tornado is the property insurance. We also have cyber insurance. So again, kind of largely out of our control there. Miscellaneous is just kind of some odd items, employee wellness, employer recognition, safety. This is kind of my least favorite category, so I usually thoroughly look at this when I get these back. Then we also have the transfers to debt service and other. So debt service is public. We want to talk about, there's multiple debt services that come through the general fund. It's right now the fire, the police station, city hall. There's still some debt on, a little bit left on the health building. So that all has to get transferred out of this fund and into the debt service fund. And then we also have the subsidy to transit. We did have a good meeting yesterday. There was a hearing on the transit bill. Sat in and listened. It was very positive. They did decrease our request, but we're hoping that, after all the bills kind of settle and they have a better idea of the overall budget, that they might look at increasing that a little bit. Capital is pretty nominal. Everything over 10,000 is what we capitalize, so most of those items go to the Fund 475. And then the last item, it's there just as a placeholder, but in order to demonstrate our commitment to increasing our cash balances, I would like for us to show that our budget has revenues in excess of our expenses, so that can boost up our cash balances. So, one of the kind of the buzzword that we talked about when we were having the budget discussions, especially towards the end of the budget conversation last year, was, back to the basics, back to the core mission. What is the function of government? So we'll be talking a lot about that. At our meeting, we talked about what requires excellence, what can be good enough, what doesn't need to be done? And then the fourth one was, what are we rebuilding from, possible budget decreases in the past that we're trying to get caught up on? So I guess this is where I really would like your input on what are your priorities that we should be looking at as the departments are filling out their budget requests?
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question? Thank you. I think this is a good start of the realities of where we are, revenue and expense side. What I would like to request is that Cabinet together collectively come back to the commission with a strategy that identifies the priorities and the recommendations for each department, including with that, a personnel plan for what's going to be needed to support that strategy, whether it's a 3 or 5 year rolling strategy that can come back to us for consideration. But I would ask the cabinet to provide those priorities from each department. And then in addition to the personnel plan that would support the strategy, I would like to see the associated capital strategy. And what does that look like 5 years out, so we know what's coming? I know that the fire department has been working on that for a while. First request coming there will be a study on the capital needs for the next 10 years that can be laid out. But I know that there are pieces in utilities, that work's been done. There's a lot that exists. It's a matter of pulling it together. But I think we have to start with the strategy, with the priorities coming from cabinet, then to meet that strategy and those priorities, what are the both personnel and capital needs that we're going to need to see, and how do we map that out from a revenue and an expense perspective? So those would be my requests.
Thank you.
Commissioner Strand?
Susan, I'm just curious. I'm curious if any of these federal mandates and executive orders and financial directives will have any impact on us and how we can keep a handle on that as to what trickles down to our city level, if at all.
We were watching that with the pause. We're obviously continue to watch it. At the time, we didn't anticipate any, significant issues. However, a lot of our funding from the state is passed through from the federal government, so that would be something we would want to watch as well. So we're keeping our eye on that. Michael is as well.
So you didn't put a number at the bottom here, but I'm anticipating even with things standing still, you're going to be at 136 million. It's at least going to be a 4 million incrementing change when you talk about steps and different things that people have. Commissioner Pipcorn, you had kind of wanted to stay in a 3% range. What are your priorities for her and her budget this year so she keeps at that level?
I think we're going to be having to do a lot of reductions. I think if you follow what's happened nationally, obviously the federal government funds us a lot, and obviously they're going to be doing a lot of reductions, so I would anticipate we'll be doing the same.
Commissioner Turnberg, do you have any comment?
I'd like to see us really get to the core city mission and any excess be examined and looked at. I think residents are fed up with spending and seeing so much spending, and they really want to see a decrease in spending. I think if you look at what just happened with the parks, and that huge increase has really created a lot of uproar with people upset with those huge increases. I think we need to streamline. What don't we need? I know, Commissioner Strand, when you were proposing cuts, there were all sorts of expenses that I had no idea about. Where do all those fall in our expenses in here? And I think we need to look at that. And maybe we cut back. Maybe we don't provide all that extra and really get to the core mission of the city.
Okay, that will be part of the cabinet conversation when we look at strategic plans and anyway, go ahead.
Susan, I'm curious with some of our efforts ongoing right now. We have our LDC, Land Development Code, unfolding. we're really, do we know the timeline of some of these commitments and how far they'll go financially? And just to remind us of some paths we're on that we just can't abandon at the moment. What else is going on, Michael?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Strand. That's a great observation because, you think about in any given year, there's a variety of work that has tails from the year before that, or it might be a multi-year project. And so part of our work and as we just had that first discussion, and let me just step back and say I really appreciate this early look at overall revenues and expenditures because it helps us have those follow-up discussions. But one of the things we want to talk about are what are those major capital items? I appreciate the comment earlier about it is capital, it is operating, it is personnel. We had a really in-depth conversation about that just last week because although there are going to be some of those major magnitude projects that are metro-wide that need to continue, there are some choices that we will have to make. And that part of that is going to have to do with what is the hiring plan for 2026? It may be a more austere, modest year. What is the ability to look into some of the other departments and organizations for additional efficiencies, as well as the capital piece? So we're going to evaluate all of that, but I would say you hit on one. The LDC is a good example of its work ongoing. It's going to wrap and it will conclude, but then there's going to be some other pieces that we're going to look at, whether it's MetroCog, whether it's our departments. Can we take a pause? And I think that's a fair question.
Any other comments? Okay, well, we got a lot of work to do before we see you again in April. Now I'm going to turn it over to Troy. Troy's going to talk about some water. Here I have.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Yeah, I have two things I want to talk about today. One is our fixed meter fee, and then lead service lines. We're getting grant funding for a portion of the lead service lines replacement project, and then we'll have to figure out the local share. So that's what I want to talk about. I would like to talk about the meter one first. There, bring that up. And I should have brought handouts, I realized when I got here. So if you can see the screens, I don't know if you have to turn or if you can see them, but
Sure.
you can.
And where are you? Oh, I bet it is. We're doing the base rate. Right?
What's that?
You're doing the rate one first?
Yeah, I'm going to do the water rate one. That's the one. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll just get right into it here. Let me make sure I can. Oops. So I'll just start with the slide. This one is a little bit quicker, but I'd like to explain that this has to do with our new meter project that we're working on. But to give just a little bit of history and overview, the city has replaced its 5/8-inch residential meters with 3/4 over time. This has been going back probably decades. And then prior meter replacement, any new replacements, we just been standardizing on 3/4-inch meters. We're going through a citywide meter replacement project, and all meters that are 5-inch will be going to 3/4-inch. So something that's been in place for sometimes, most water systems have a fixed meter fee, and that's kind of gives you a base revenue, whether it's wet or dry, and then through the winter, so you have a stable source of revenue. And we've been looking at this meter charge. So the issue is when we switch out these 5/8 meters, and just looking at the numbers going into the project, it's about 52% 5/8 meters and about 48% 3/4 meters. But if you, I'll go to the next slide here. And with the increase going into 2025, this is the new table of fixed meter fees specifically focused on the 5/8 and 3/4-inch meters. And we are at about 11% of the meter project have been replaced at this point. So we're partway through the project, but the issue becomes when we replace those 5/8 inch meters with 3/4, and then we'd have 50-some% of our residents, their meter fee would jump up almost $10, and that's, a lot of that happens in the core neighborhood. So we're very sensitive to how we affect our customers. So if, again, 52% would jump up about $10.
Can you help me understand?
Yes, sir.
Do we have to upgrade people, or is it required? I'm lost a little bit.
Okay,
Sorry, but-
say the question again, please.
Do we have to upgrade people, or is this required to go to the larger size, or?
No, no, that's a really good question. So thank you for that. So it's a decision that we made as a team, and in fact, it was probably made decades ago, that any new dwellings or homes get a 3/4 inch meter. So just from a parts and inventory and all that, we've, about 48% of the system has been converted to 3/4 up to this time, start of the meter project, and now we're converting the rest, and it'll just be standard for everyone in the community for that.
And do they operate similarly in the meantime, or are there deficiencies with the smaller size compared to the 3/4, or?
Well, I guess, and I wasn't around for the initial decision to start going with 3/4, but they will get a little bit more water, water through with irrigation and so forth, and that's a really good question. But it's something we just decided to really standardize across the city. But the advantage is that inventory and when we replace everything will be the same once we get done with the project in 2027. Does that sort of help? No, that's okay. So the goals, when I bring this to you, and then this is just for future reference, so that at some point we'd bring it to a full city commission with a recommendation, but I'd like to hear the input. But the goals, we want to minimize the residential water user impact, especially in the core neighborhoods. And then we'd like to have a common residential rate for meters. And then the thought process was be to revenue neutral through this transition for the water utility. So, and this looks pretty simple, but it was quite a lot of data crunching behind the scenes. But we did come up with 3 alternatives that we'd like to talk with you about. One is to stay with the current structure, in which case that would be about a $1.6 million revenue increase, but it would hit our core neighborhoods have the biggest impact. The second option would be to have the 3/4 and 5/8 meters have the same base rate. And so that would be from a revenue neutral standpoint. And then the third option, just to look at it, it would be a straight volumetric rate, revenue neutral. That's pretty uncommon in the water industry, but we thought we'd look at it anyway. So with alternative 1, that's just staying with what we do after the meter projects. All customers would have a 3/4 inch meter. The minimum charge would increase from $10.40 to $20.20 per month. The estimated revenue increase would be $1.6 million. And then the 5/8 meter, again, more in the core neighborhoods, would increase an average of $9.80 a month. So that's just the do nothing alternative. The second alternative, which would be modify and combine the 3/4 and 5/8 inch rate. So what that would be, if we blended those together, it'd be $14.75 base rate. And then, as in the past, the first 2,000 gallons are included in the base rate, and then anything beyond that would be charged volumetrically. So that's combining them and then following a similar what we did in the past. So if we do this, if we do this alternative, the 3/4 inch meter base fee would decrease by an average of $5.45. The 5/8 would increase by $4.35. So like in the core neighborhoods, rather than an almost $10 increase, it would be a $4.35 increase. One exception to this for multifamily and commercial, that would stay at the $20.20. And this would be a revenue neutral approach. Alternative 3, it would be a straight volumetric, so there would be no base rate. So the volumetric fee would just be charged with the new meter system, what you use is what you pay. And then we do currently have a declining, I won't go into that much, but a declining block. The more you use it, gets a little less costly for volumetric. And then the 3/4 average decrease would be $4.25, and then the average increase for the 5/8 would be $2. So the thing about this one, again, it's very uncommon in the water industry, but it would really impact some of our larger customers like NDSU, Cass Lake Creamery, and Sanford Health. They'd have substantial monthly increase. So that's just the alternatives. And then if we look at, check my time here, the positives and negatives of each. So one, that's just keeping as is. We would match existing practice of replacing the 5/8 meter, increase revenue for the city. That's positives. The negatives, majority of our meters, our 5/8 are in the core neighborhoods. It'd be a substantial bill increase and could be perceived as more of a money grab by the utilities. If we combine the charges, the positives would be a simpler billing with the meter replacement, lessen bill impacts to the core neighborhood, and then it'd be revenue neutral. The negatives still increase the 5/8 customer rate and discounting the 3/4. Number 3, the volumetrics is smallest impact to residential customers, disproportionate impact to commercial customers, and then removes a consistent base revenue with.
Troy, what is the increased revenue on volumetric 3? You gave us a increased revenue on a 1 of 1.1 million or something, but what is it for 3?
For the volumetric part, this is a revenue neutral, complete, so.
It's revenue neutral,
yeah,
just puts more on the commercial side.
It hits the commercial more than it does the residential, so.
Why couldn't you do a blend? Increase a little bit for your 5/8 and decrease a little for your 3/4, but make it so you make some money out of it.
We could do that. We did, and we could do that. We did, from our financial model, we did do, an increase going into 25 and 26. So we already did a water increase for predicting, revenue. So we've already, going into 25 and 26, we will increase revenue just based on our changes. This would be added and above that. It could be done, but right now, what our model says is this is, it's revenue adequacy or sufficient from a revenue standpoint to get us, but it could be done. Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question? Obviously, the new meters, we don't have meter readers, so how much money will we be saving since we don't have to employ those anymore? I'd like to see that number. And I would support the volumetric, but the other thing is that would give you an incentive. If you use less water, then you would spend less money, and so that would encourage people to be more conscious of how much money they use. So the other thing is the older neighborhoods, I think eventually it would be good to replace them, but not to make that mandatory. I think that's a lot of the lower income housing that we have, and so I think we need to be very sensitive to increasing their costs. So I think for now, I would support leaving it as it is, and then using the volumetric, because from the incentive of if you're more careful, if your bill is high, you're going to be more careful about how you use your water. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the comments. For the meter readers, we could give that. There have been in the past three meter readers. So, but a couple of them have been allocated to new duties, so they kept their jobs. Go ahead.
No, and that's great that they can have another job, but I'm just saying this has cost us money in the past, and the reason we're doing this is because it's technology helping us save money, and so I want to know what the number is. Thanks.
Okay, can do that. And then just a question back. So with the given the option, would that be to give the option to not put in a new meter or to change the meter size to keep it what it is? Is that what you're?
This is just me. To me, if they're not having any problems, you let them keep that option. If they, to give you an example, if they have a sprinkler system or something like that, perhaps they'd want to upgrade. So then you let them have that option. But I just think it's not that much to have the inventory. I'm sure it's a little more for you, but from my perspective, over time, it'd be great to upgrade it. But to me, to try to do it, that's not necessary. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll think about those. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So.
Can I ask one more? I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
No.
Is that true? If we did the volumetric and let's say some of those high users reduced, would that give them incentive to use less water or be more efficient?
That's possible. What we'd have to do is just have conversations with those larger users, because I'm just gave these as examples today, but we actually haven't had conversations with them. I just wanted to bring a few examples, but yeah, it would be, they'd have to look, it would be an expense, whether they can be more efficient or not. They'd have to figure that out, but that's true.
But I guess that's not only the high-end users, as a residential user, if you're on volumetric, would that give you incentive to use less water? So to me, this is a positive thing in multiple ways. Obviously, we like selling water because that helps the city budget, but we also like to be environmentally good stewards. And if you're giving people an incentive to watch how they spend their money, I think that's a good thing. So and tell me if I'm incorrect, Troy, but I think that would be good.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you for that, because like the option, because keeping as is, we're concerned about that increase, being we've kind of standardized over decades, but the volumetric was just an interesting option to kind of look at, so that's why we did the calculations on that. So I appreciate the input. I'll have to get back to you on that.
But I'm not saying necessarily quit going to 3/4. You could go to 3/4. But like the option 2, you're decreasing your cost to 3/4. The 3/4 customers are already used to the bill. They already know where their bill is. I don't necessarily think you'd have to go down. But if you're concerned of the core neighborhoods that it's an increase of $10 is more than you want, perhaps for people who convert, we would go at a lesser rate to over 2 to 6 years or something to finally bring them into that line. But we're still third lowest water utility in the state. We're low on our water bill.
Yeah,
And to Dave's point, some of the commercial users may use less water, learn how to use less water. We've had that in different industries with some people recycle or do different things. But I wouldn't necessarily bring down the 3/4 because people are used to the 3/4 bill. But if you convert it from a 5/8, like Dave says, for a sprinkler or something else to 3/4, you should pay for that extra.
Okay.
Can I add one more thing, Troy? So we
Yes,
have we have a house in Colorado. The other thing is, these new meters, you can keep much more better track of how much water you're using. And also it can tell if you have a leak or something like that. So this is going to be very beneficial in lots of ways. But I do like the concept of the residential, especially being able to keep track of how much water they're using and saying, hey, if I can save some money, these new meters, you can do a lot better. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the technology is much more precise. It's kind of like our new accounting software. We're going to be able to see things a lot more, almost, I don't know if it'll be on a daily basis, but it'll track, because that happened to me. We had a leak and they contacted me. So things like that will be very beneficial.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the input. We thought a lot about this, and just paying for what you use for. That's and like what Mayor said, we can still install the 3/4. We could still install them, but then just keep the rate as we're
but just to give you an example, so our meter readers come out once a month and manually check you've seen them. This technology, it's all the time, and you can tell what your water flow rates are. And no, it will be a big advantage for the homeowners to know almost immediately what your usage is and things like that. So would you say that's correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So customers will be able to see what they use. You can get it on your computer or phone app, and you can just see it that same day or, multiple times a day. So that'll be a great benefit to not the customers, but then operating the water system. Like you'll know the 2021 drought, we would know where that water use is kind of taking place and everything. So that's a big advantage, but that'll be a nice advantage to customers, be able to see what they use. So,
Troy, do customers in a home setting, do they feel the difference? Is there a difference between a 5/8 and a 3/4? Is there anything different to them?
yeah, I think from their experience, they would see no difference. They would see no difference. But when you do get into irrigation and lawn watering and stuff, it probably lets a little more water through on them.
So John, can I just jump in real quick and say, that's why the debate is, if you have a sprinkler system and you're running your shower and you have the smaller capacity line, you would feel the difference. If you have the bigger capacity, then you would be able to do. Does that make sense to you?
Well, it does, and so those are choices people make. So I'm not so sure we shouldn't also explore opting in options, where people can choose to upgrade if they want to. I'm cautious about charging people for something they haven't gotten. If you've upgraded some and not upgraded others, and you're bringing them all to the middle, they're paying for something they didn't get, and they're getting a discount on what they got. So I'd look at opting in. I'm also curious about the timeline. How much does it matter if we wait? You're talking inventory for service. That's the issue?
Yeah. Long-term inventory. Our project is going on right now, so we're actively, even today as we're talking, probably even though it's cold, it's happening. The project is, as when I looked this morning, we're about 11% installed, and that's mostly happening in the older neighborhoods.
And new construction requires the 3/4?
That's what we've been doing.
And when we're doing these lead pipe upgrades, are there moments in time where we're connecting with the customer? We say, this is the optimum time to upgrade, or does that matter? Or?
Well, okay, good question. Hopefully I'm trying to get to your answer, but optimal time, we do want to get this conversion done by, hopefully most of it by 2027. That enables to see the data, the customer data, just as Commissioner Pepcorn was talking about. So we do want to get this project done. We're well into it, and a lot of stuff going on between departments. Yeah.
So there's no choice for people eventually. If or by 2027, they're all going to be converted?
All good. We will have. We will have an opt-out for maybe select, depending. Sometimes there's concerns with medical issues and things with the meters, and we're sensitive to that. That's I think typical of most of some of the other meter systems, electric or water, that there is an opt-out option, but that's a little more from a medical standpoint. Did I answer? Did I help answer sort of? Or?
It's me, it's not you.
Yeah.
It's fine, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, move on to the lead service line one. Thank you for the input. Oh, I'm sorry.
Susan, what else do we have? It's 11 o'clock.
Lead service line.
Troy's got something? Yeah. Go ahead.
I got another slideshow here, so.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring it up.
Oops, it's a totally different one.
Yeah, I know. trying to,
Sorry about that.
how many
We
more
just-
slides? Are you, do you have all your slides through? You need to get through the end of your slides, Troy.
We can't get out of the slideshow.
Oh,
Yeah. we need
okay.
to get-
I can escape out.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Here you go. I'll get your slideshow up.
I put in extra
Sorry.
slides just in case there were additional questions, so.
And it's that one.
Okay.
There you go.
So this one, this is our lead service line grant funding, and so I do, in the audience here, I have one of our, Matt Christensen, he's our regulatory manager, so he's really been digging into the new, well, the lead and copper revisions, which went into effect last fall, and then we have a new set of regulations in 2027, so he's more the expert in that. But with this is really important. What I really want to find out here is get input or talk to you about the local cost options. So if we go through, so the lead service line grant availability, there's unlikely to be another future chance at this significant federal funding. And then just before I get into it, the North Dakota, our grant funding for our project, the state does that. North Dakota has it already in their accounts, so it's already there for utilization. As far as the picture, what we're really going to be talking about today is the picture. It shows the service line attached to the water main, which is typically in the street, and then it goes to the curb stop. So that's really the cutoff point between the public side. So when we do like a street replacement project, that public side is replaced. That's just what we, as a practice. What's left is the private side from the curb stop to the house, and that's in the city of Fargo, which is pretty common with other cities. That's the private side, so that's the customer ownership. So that's really what we're talking about today, and how do we, and most of our service lines, lead service lines, are on the private side. Not all of them, but most of them are. So just the agenda, this tap water lead levels, new lead and copper rules, a lead service line inventory, and then customer notification, community benefits, and then looks like a lot, but I don't have that many slides actually. So just to let you know how we've been doing for the regulation, we did have, from a testing levels, we were really low we had to start retesting more sampling after the new membrane water treatment plant, and we've tested better than in the past. I won't go into how that necessarily, how the 15 parts per billion, that's the EPA kind of level or action level where we got to do something, but we're way below that. That's kind of the point of this slide. And then we're under new regulations now, effective October of last year. And all cities, and just to go back, this is really a result of Flint, Michigan. So when Flint, Michigan, it drove a lot of the regulation moving forward. But so there will be a new, what's called action or trigger level, depending on what you fall under. It'll go from 15 to 10, so we'll have a lower threshold that we need to make compliance with, and then the sampling will change. And then I won't go into this much detail, but the lead and copper improvements, that's effective November of 2027, about something less than 3 years from now. That is just the amount of work or amount of things we have to do. Matt in the audience, he got a list. It's bullet points about 8.5 pages long, just bullet points of all the things we have to do with the new rule. It's very complex, as complex as I've ever seen since I've been in the field. And then the grant funding, lead service line inventory. So the picture on the right, that shows really what the service line materials are all across the city. What you'd like kind of focus up the middle right of that map, that's the red, that's really where the lead service lines, it's really in our core neighborhoods. We have 2,150 about lead service lines that we know about in town. We have about 50 or so that are unknown status, and that's something we need to figure out. But that's okay that we don't know. We just need to figure it out. So, and again, what we're talking about is the more of the private side cost share. How do we do that? Again, the loan amount, total loan, if we use it to capacity, is 35 million. The grant part is over 23 million. So just a question, how will the customers know they have a lead service line and about the program? Well, in October of last year, or late September, October, we did send out our first notice under the new rules to customers that have a lead service line. It was really mandatory language. We had to send out probably 3,000 notices roughly with known lead service lines and unknowns. So that's going to be an annual thing moving forward. So all customers should really know just from that standpoint that they have a lead service line. And then with the new rules, we'll have to, any time a home changes ownership, we'll have to let them know about it. With the program, replacement program itself, we're going to team with the communications department. So we'll have notification letters about the replacement program, social media, website, press releases, so forth. So far, about 300, with those first notifications, we've had about over 300 customers contact us with interest in getting more information when the program becomes available. So there's about 15% roughly are interested in getting further information. And then just community benefits. It lowers risk of lead exposure for future generation, potentially improves home competitiveness when selling, but lead service line may be a negative. And then it brings grant funding and construction work into the community, and it ultimately improves the water system, Fargo, and then the funding is available to secure, which we're doing through 2026, but we have a longer time to actually replace. So just, as we go into this, officially, the letter that I got, the grant funding runs out in 2029. However, we're allowed to potentially ask for extensions. So depending on what the interest is, we have 5 years as of right now, 2025 through 2020, but we can probably ask for an extension as well if need be. We'd have to request that formally. Another concern is this lead and copper rule improvements. So that would be effective, or I should have changed this, it's November 1st, 2027. But what it says in that rule, the rule says essentially you need to have all lead service lines replaced in your water system within 10 years of that rule. So that'd be 2037. That's a long ways out. And that's really the water system, no matter if it's public or private, it's the water system's responsibility to try and do that. What we can do is if a customer does not want that to replace the service line, if we make 4 attempts, more form, we got to document 4 attempts by different methods, and then we would be released of responsibility to do that. So it's a significant, just a significant required under the lead. There's, again, with the new rules, there's going to be a lot of work that goes into that. If we get most of them out or nearly all of them, it will help us from a just workflow, and it's still going to be significant work, but it would lessen it if we got them out. And then the customer participation percentage, that's a really big deal. That's what other systems that have kind of gone before us, they run into issues with customer participation. Like I said, about 15% of customers have notified that they want more information. And then just fairness to all the customers. So with the lead service line grant funding, it's not retroactive, so people have done it before. There's not much we can do from a grant standpoint with that. And then if the water utility participates, then, it could be, in their rates, or, another option would be use like sales tax potentially if that's extended. So again, just moving back again, we're the picture again, but mainly focused on the private side from the curb stop to the home. So we do the math on it, so it'd be 23.3 million in grant or loan forgiveness. That's assuming we use all of the money, which may or may not be the case. And then we'd have a drinking water SRF loan of 11.7 million. It's the 33.5%. That's what I want to talk to you about today. And then the loan terms, really good terms. The interest rate is 0.5% because they're trying to make it an incentive to do that's much lower than market. It'd be a 30-year loan, and then this is a kind of a key point. Payments would begin in about 2031, so we really have to just pay a little bit of interest until we get the project completed, and then we'd have to pay principal and interest. If we fully utilized for that 11.7 million, it'd be about 420,000 per. Yes, sir.
Does the state have anything where they'd be willing to participate in this?
No, that's a good question. I think to answer that, they already have in this, because the way the federal states it, the federal, for this grant, it's up to 49%. So the state has figured out how to get it up to 66.5% already. So that's a very good question, but I think that's about the max. They didn't say, they said at least this amount, 66. So it's not that it couldn't happen. There could be a little bit more, but I don't think it would be a lot more at that point. So, okay.
Troy, how at risk are these grants from the APA?
What's that?
Are these EPA grants in hand?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I did talk to the state, and they actually have the money for Fargo in their North Dakota accounts right now. So it's there. It's there right now. So
Isn't that something? We don't know what's going to be there tomorrow anywhere.
with
These federal grants, we don't know what tomorrow is going to look like.
Yeah, we don't know. So that, and we did, like, I did personally have quite a bit of back and forth with the state, and say the month of January and stuff, but because I did ask that very question, and they showed it's not just Fargo, but they had the funding in place for lead service line kind of across the state for. Go ahead, sir.
So the concept I like is the opt-in, kind of like the meters, where, and I think this will take you time anyway. So I think what we should do is just say, as a commission, say our vision is to replace all these. That's just for the good of everybody. And then however the timing and the financing, however it works out. But I just think to start out, obviously you have some that are interested now, but as time goes by, just to gradually get this accomplished, because I think it's an important thing to do for public safety. And so I don't think we don't need to specifically run this. You can do that, but to just gradually do this as time allows, and to make sure we get it done before the funding runs out. I guess that's I don't know if you agree with that.
No, thank you for that. And so in 2025, because we're like new to this too, in this kind of volume. So I would say 2025, we're going to try and get some done, but it'll probably be a lower amount than say 26, 27, just because this is new to us and all the dynamics of how it works. But yeah, our goal, that would be a really good goal if we could have all the lead service lines out of service, by 2030 or 2031. That would be a real benefit to the community. Yep. Anything more? Okay. So this is where I start talking, and I'll try to be clear. It's a little bit confusing, but again, what we're really talking about is the curb stop to the private side of it. So let's just assume, and we have tracking numbers, so we think we're kind of in the ballpark here, but if you assume it's about $10,000 for private side lead service line replacements, what we're talking about is how we cover the last 33.5%. And there's other options than probably these, but 3 options I'll put out there. Again, it's mostly in the core neighborhoods too, so just be mindful of that. So if the customer were to pay the 66 or half of that 33.5%, that would be a total cost of $1,675, and then the city would pay that other share. Another option would be on that $3,350 should be customer pays 10% or about $1,000 in total, and then the city would pay the other amount. And then another option would be the city just take care of it. Go ahead, sir.
So, Mr. Chair, I think I would be the most supportive of having us pay 100%, but at the same time, I think we should pursue getting funding from the state or other options, because I do think this is something that, and more federal money, I think we would have a better opportunity. Because the other thing is, this is not the fault of the people that lived in the older neighborhoods. I mean, that's just how it was. And so to have them have to pay this, I don't really think I support that. So, and maybe there's a reason behind it, but.
No, thank you. Thanks for the comment, because when I came here, I'm going through kind of the math here, but I did, I've looked at our financial model. Payments don't begin until 2031. One thing, if sales tax is extended, that could take care of it. And then if we did put it into our rates overall, it is a big number, but in the context of things, it's a little over 1% of our rates to just
The only
take care
problem is, Troy, is you have some people who have the capacity to pay it, so you're really taking,
Yep.
if you pay for everybody, all of us pay for that everybody, because you have to make up for the deficit in that. So if we pay 100% as a city, all utility owners will pay extra for utility to do that, Dave. So I do think there could be, he's offering if the customer can pay, they can pay. They have a 16%, 10%, or 100%. But you're really giving $1,000 to replace your lead is pretty cheap pricing. So, Dave, I think you have to think about that. It's not that the state or feds make up for what was paid. It's we make up for it right now. There's no other federal program like this. So this will be the only program you have. So you have to decide, if somebody could afford it, could they pay?
Mr. Chair, could I also add that other cities that have done this, if they don't pay a more significant portion, the uptake is much less. Correct.
Yeah. So, I wanted to respond to Commissioner Pepcorn. We were, as a utility, and then we were kind of disappointed in the 49% limit. It is what it is. But that's where they capped it. I suppose what they thought their dollars could stretch further across the U.S. to make that happen. And then Commissioner Kolpak, to your point there, what some of the larger cities that have kind of gone before us or working on this, where they, if there's pros and cons to everything, but really they don't, unless it's city paid, they don't get the participation. So that's one of the things. And then just going back to, I have Matt Christensen in the audience here. With the new lead and copper rule revisions that kick in 3 years, it's still going to be work regardless of whether we get them out of service or not. But that amount of work that starts to chew into our percentage and all the tracking, because it would be multiple departments. It's engineering, it's public works, it's water utility. It's going to be a ton of work regardless on all our parts, but it would lessen that burden down the road. But I get, not disagreeing, I get the point. I'm just saying that other utilities, they don't get the participation until they start covering it. So there will be some. I mean, there will be, so, but if we get, say, half of them out of service, that still leaves a 1,000 that we still got to deal with long term. So I know it's a very touchy thing, but I just want to tell you that's what we've done with the homework, so.
Troy, how does this look for the customer? What, is there excavation? Do they come in and they dig up your ground and, or is it non-intrusive, or how will they experience it?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So from their experience, what I really want to do, or the way we're setting it up, we'd like to get so many done per year, so we'd pool it and we'd bid it out. That would leave, because we deal with contracts all the time, and if we do a pool, we get more volume, and then we hopefully get lower bid price. So bid price, because we're used, I'm not saying we're perfect at it, but we deal with contractors a lot. So and they gotta make a living and make a profit as well. But we think if we bid it out by unit cost, how much say how many feet of new pipe they got to put in, that would be the most cost efficient way to do it. Because if it does get out of control, the pricing, then it goes through that grant funding.
But what physically, will they digging up your yard?
Oh.
That's what I'm just wondering, what will it look like to them?
No, that's good. And unfortunately, I deleted all the slides that Matt put together there of what they would experience. But what'll happen is they do, and it's sort of like, fiber optics, and they do directional drilling. So they do have to cut on the picture there. You see the curb stop. What they'd have to do is they got to excavate. That's where they got to get to that curb stop, and then they can actually drill the pipe, a new pipe, into the house. They have the technology to kind of do that. And there's a few different ways they can do it, but that would just be one of them. They would just drill it underground. So the only thing from an excavation, it would be an area around the curb stop, and then just to excavate everything, that would be more expensive and more restoration. So.
How long are residents without water? How long does the project take?
Does a project take? Actually, we talked to a contractor here. So for one location, if a crew should be able to get about 5 done in a day. And so it goes pretty fast. I think I'm picking on Matt a lot in the audience here, but he just had it done, and they were in and out in a couple hours, and that might have been sewer or something like that. But and then again, we would just take so many per year to try and get them done and but again, 2025 would be more a test project. So does that kind of answer your question? Okay. So, yeah. Oh, I think, yeah. So, sorry, thank you, sir. So again, the assumptions, if we did do, if we did do customer portion, if the customer paid $16.75, it'd be $14.13 a month. If we did do, if the customer paid 10%, it'd be $8.44, and then that's the city option. But again, that would be, in a city option, that would start in 2031. At totally different terms, it'd be 30-year loan, and that's really what I had. I know that's a lot of information, but that's kind of what I had. So, this one, take feedback, but we need, with our programs trying to start in 2025, we do need to make a decision pretty quick as to what, within the next probably few commission meetings, as to what exactly we do for the customer percentage or whatever. So, but I appreciate your time. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Troy.
Thanks, Troy.
Good presentation. Susan, do we have anything else? Commissioners, any questions? Go ahead.
Have a quick comment that I think it's important we remember that The residents have spoken and are expecting firefighters to get an increase in pay, and they're expecting more police officers. So I think it's important that we remember that. They voted it in overwhelmingly, and that we stay true to voters' decision. And then I also have a question. We had discussed eliminating some of the excess committees and boards that we have in the city, which may in fact save us some cost and have some budgetary savings. When are we going to revisit that again?
Thank you, Commissioner, for that question. So one of the topics that we're discussing right now is a consolidation of 3, maybe potentially 4 committees. And so we are working on that. That has been a early 2025 project. And so when the calendar year flipped after we finished the last budget, that is one of our priorities for Q1, Q2. You'll hear more about that later.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate the comment, Commissioner Turnberg. And that's what you're going to see come forward from the 2 chiefs, is it will be addressing your concerns there. Thank you.
One last thought, Troy, for this lead pipe conversion project. If I had a magic wand, we'd make sure everybody's home got done. You know, it'd be really unfortunate to miss this opportunity and have a percentage of our people and our homes and our residents not addressed, because this will never happen again. And the safety issues are compelling. But if there's any way we can really step up and just make sure every single property gets addressed, if at all possible. I don't know what that would mean and take, but this is the only time to do it.
No, yeah, thank you for that. We're going to try our best to get as high a percentage as we can, for sure, so.
And if they have trouble, John will be willing to go to the homeowner and ask them, because you said they get 4 attempts. If that final attempt, let John go and talk to him. Because he's exactly right. This is a great opportunity, and you shouldn't miss it. If you're just, I don't want my yard dug up, you know, it should be an opportunity to get it done. And that's for the safety of all of us. And when you talk about our lead levels are very, very low, but why risk having any levels in there if we could get it all cleaned up? And the next homeowner, right, you'll come in a house and it's got lead pipes and you go, why would that be? That's crazy.
Thank you.